Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Fiercely Spiritual Podcast. I'm your host, Sandra Ray, and today I have a guest with me, Natalia Komis, and she is an intuitive business mentor, a creative light activator, a soul channel, and a social entrepreneur. Natalia, it's so lovely to have you here with us today.
So lovely to be here. Thank you, Sandra.
I'm
And
re-
hello to all of your listeners.
and I'm really looking forward to chatting with you because there's so much that I want to talk about your story. And I was actually chatting to my husband last night, and I was saying that I was talking with you today, and I explained a bit about you and your background. And even he was like, wow, that sounds so interesting. Um, so tell us a little bit about you. I know that you grew up in Greece originally.
Yes, so I'm half Greek on my dad's side, and I grew up in Greece for all of my childhood, really. I was actually born in the UK, and within, I think, a couple of months, I was living in Greece with my family, and I was there until full time until I was about 12, 13. And then we moved to the UK, but spent every school holiday in Greece. My family was still there, the business was still there. We had our life there, and it wasn't really until I had the choice of, well, actually, I don't want to be going back to Greece every holiday. I want to do my own thing. That my life kind of shifted from Greece. It's a very interesting upbringing. I As a child in Greece, especially when I was brought up there, it was a very free environment. We had fields all around us. We had goodness knows how many animals. I think we had up to 25 cats at one point, and dogs and chickens, and the lot. And I used to just go off into the fields all the time, every day. People didn't even know where I was most of the time. And
And were you on your own or with
oh
friends?
yeah, on my own with the animals, going around making dens, um, playing and running around in the field, pretending to be Xena warrior princess. Freaking loved her as a child, still do, obviously. And yeah, and it was just a really lovely, free childhood. But as with many countries that, especially that are, let's say, from the more patriarchal societies, uh, once you hit a certain age as a female, that freedom starts to disappear slowly. So when we moved to the UK, that was really one of the reasons that we did move, because life just suddenly changes. And, I saw all of my friends that were girls start to have much more controlled lives, have to lie to their family all the time about what they were doing. I think all of them have multiple Facebook accounts, even now, in their 30s. So, very different lifestyle once you grow up. Really lovely as a child, and when we moved to the UK, we moved to Devon, to the southwest of the UK, near the seaside, so that there was still some kind of nature. And I didn't realize until very recently, the last few years, how truly important nature was to me, how important, being in the trees and by the sea and in the fields, how that whole thing that I experienced as a child was so important, so intrinsic to who I am, and you know, who I am in myself, but also on this earth. I remember I used to literally talk to the trees when I was a kid. There was this one tree on this hill, and I used to go and meet it every single day. Um, and I didn't think that was weird at all.
And and did the trees talk back to you?
I feel like they did. Yeah. I mean, I used to sit with this tree for hours.
Because
Uh,
I had a teacher, and when he was younger, he used to talk to the trees, but he could feel the energy about the trees, and he used to like run in and out through the trees, and he'd feel all their different
oh
energy.
wow, that's
And he
amazing.
was saying, like, he was just like running around, he's like, oh, this is brilliant. And everybody else is like, well, what are you talking about? What are you doing? But yeah, that's why I ask if the trees talk back, because even now I find when I go for a walk in the park or up the mountains, like I love trees. And I know some people are drawn to the water, and I love the water,
Mm.
but there's something about trees that like I just have to get out and connect with them.
I mean, I remember just always going up and touching it and sitting there with the tree and really feeling so loved and grounded when I was there. And I think that's why I used to go every day, because I was wanting that connection. And yeah, and now that, because I'm an elemental energy healer, so I work with the elements, I work with the trees,
Well, I was going
and
to say that
spirits and
you
all of that now.
you brought that into your work,
Yeah,
and I'm going to talk about that later because I want to dive into that. But I love that upbringing, and that, you know, being in nature was so pivotal to the way you're working today. And that could easily have not been the case, where, you know, you went and worked in an office, or, and there's nothing wrong with working in an office, but, and I did it for years. But I love that you bring it into your work and help other people. So we're going to get back to that in a minute. But
mm,
what I wanted to ask you was, when you were younger, because I know you see spirit, did you see spirit when you were out in nature or at that stage?
yeah. So I remember we had a house that was kind of two houses. There was a downstairs house and an upstairs house, and we always had to move out of the upstairs house to the downstairs house when it came to the summer, because we always rented the upstairs one out to people that would pay us money for it, because that was a nicer part of the house. So every 6 months we had to move houses from upstairs to downstairs. It's really annoying as a child, but it was kind of fun. And I remember having this party downstairs, and we had this big party, and we invited loads of friends. And upstairs was, I think we were just moving at the time from upstairs to downstairs. And I remember going upstairs and no one was around. And I didn't think anything of it. I just went upstairs to get something. And I saw this man there with a hat on. And I was a little bit confused, because I was like, who's this man? Why is he in my house? And I just saw him going into my parents' bedroom. And I thought, that's a little bit weird. And I just suddenly got really scared and ran away. And I went downstairs and I told my mum. I can't remember when. I'm not sure. Don't think it was that night. I think I told her later on. And she said, what did he look like? And I explained, and he had this hat on and blah, 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 blah. And that he went into her room. And she said, yeah, I know who you're talking about. I see him all the time in my room. And
Oh,
she said that that she thought it was the guy that owned the land before we built our house. And his family, there was a huge hoo-ha about whose land it happens all the time in Greece, whose land it was, and the family all kind of argued about it before they sold it and all this jazz. So we think it's the man that owned the land prior, and he was just sort of hanging about there.
and that's interesting. So your mom was seeing him as well.
Yeah. So
Okay.
both me and my mum have the gift of sight, and she's also a healer. And and whenever, as I was growing up, as I was seeing all of these spirits, for me it was quite scary because they weren't always very nice. So I used to tell her about it, and together we'd try and, we'd figure out what it was that they'd want, and what was going on, and maybe there was clearing that needed to happen. And quite often I would end up in places that needed to be cleared. And by that, I mean the energy needed to be cleared, or the spirits needed to move on. And it was something where I'd get drawn there for whatever reason. And luckily, had my mum to help me and support me through actually doing that when I wasn't quite aware of how to do it fully.
Yeah.
Um,
I was going to say that because having
yeah,
her support must have been amazing to know you could turn to her and ask her. And there's so many children, I think, who do have that gift of sight, and their parents say you haven't seen anything, or they ignore it, or they tell them that it was just a dream.
yeah,
And it's so I suppose frustrating for the child when they
And
know.
scary as
But
well. It
that's
can be
true.
really scary.
Yeah, yeah. So that's great you had that support.
Yeah, um and I remember when I went to uni, so well actually prior to that we moved into this house, and there was a girl that lived in the house, a spirit, and she was obsessed with me, and I mean obsessed. Like she used to play tricks on me. She used to get into my bed at night and um breathe into my ear when I was asleep. Like it was horrendous. And
And what age was she?
she was probably early teens at that point. I was more, I think I was about 16, 17, 18. She was probably more like 13.
Hmm.
But there was a history there where the more that we got to know her, the more we kind of realized that, well, actually, she didn't have particularly nice life when she lived in that house. The house it's an old Victorian house, so it was there was a maid's quarter, and the attic, which was my bedroom, was where they would have lived. And so um, she loved hanging out in the attic with me, which was great. um, and sometimes you'd be outside in the garden and I'd literally see her walking up the stairs towards my room. And then you'd just think, I don't really want to go to bed today.
What's she up to? Where is she going? And did you feel drawn to help her to transition, or?
I think at the time I was at that point where I was just frustrated that she existed, to be honest. I was just like, I just want you to stop pestering me, like stop doing these things to me because it's scary. I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night with you breathing in my ear, thank you. And it really, my mum dealt with that one quite a lot more than me. And I mean, she's very, because my mum still lives in that house, and the girl is very protective over the house. So if there's people that she doesn't like who come into the house, you know it. Things start to happen.
So she's still there.
She's still there.
Okay.
She's much happier about life, and doesn't pester anyone as much. But she definitely does things to the house if she doesn't like people that come in, or if things are disturbed in a way that she's not happy about. And when I went to uni, I had some crazy experiences in the halls in the first year that we lived in, because there was a lot of history there, because I went to uni in Bath, and it was the halls in the center of town, and it was a really old building that had actually been bombed in the war and rebuilt, and had also prior been a asylum. So you can imagine.
Oh my goodness. I did a lot of history there.
Yeah. And I remember I actually loved my experience in Bath, because my work, so I studied art, and my work was so influenced by the experiences that I'd had there, and what the spirits were trying to tell me and where they were leading me. I mean, I uncovered quite a lot of history that I wouldn't have uncovered if it wasn't for them. You know, I'd learned about why the window tax had happened, how that had all worked out in Bath. There were, hidden slave trade, children's slave trade behind these windows. Like there was so much that I was guided to find out by the spirits, and all of that influenced my work. So I ended up painting and creating sculptures and doing all sorts of things to tell those stories, really.
Wow.
And
did you find it overwhelming at all?
Yes, definitely. There was definitely times where it was overwhelming, especially when, you're at uni, you're young, first year, you want to go out and party, you have a few drinks.
And did you do anything to protect your energy?
Yeah, I did do a few different things. So, I was always calling in my guides and my angels, and I can't remember. I definitely would have had things like crystals, and I burnt incense and all that kind of stuff, just things that would make me feel more settled and grounded and calm. And yeah, and just really just ask them to leave ultimately, you know. And at times when that wasn't happening, I would, you know, asking them, what is it that you're actually wanting from here, this situation?
And you, I think your intuition obviously spoke to you, and you were able to listen to that, which is huge, because I think intuition is such an important thing, particularly when you are dealing with spirits like that. But I know you had a really powerful experience with your intuition in 2015, and your
Yeah.
intuition saved your life, basically.
Yeah,
Is that right? Yeah.
definitely. So I was working in Nepal. I'd been doing some work in Nepal, and I mean, I love Nepal. It's one of my favorite places in the world. It's definitely somewhere that I've had a past life, and it just feels like home. It's insane. And had been working there with these other guys. Like, I'd done work previously there, but I'd gone for a different project this time. And I was working with these guys, and just everything that was going on would just felt wrong. It just didn't feel like I was in the right place. And it was really hard, because actually it was quite a manipulative environment, and it was really hard for me to say no and to walk away and to go on my own and do something that I wanted to do. And it got to the point where just to give you a bit of background, we were working with these mountaineers who are actually record breaking Nepali mountaineers who had, you know, summited Everest 12, 13 times, which is insane. And we were helping them with their projects and what they were doing. And, you know, they were working on a project to get internet to Everest and all this stuff. And I remember trying so hard to get a lot of the ethical stuff in there, because I was like, do we want to bring internet to Everest though? Like, is this really a thing? And, you know, I'm going over it. And then there was this whole hoo-ha of us all needing to be actually going with them to Everest, like going and summiting, and not summiting to the top, but like at least going to the camps. And I literally broke down in tears. Like, I had such a strong reaction to this, and I just said, I'm not going. I'm just not coming with you. There's no way I'm doing it. Which was a shock to everybody, because prior to that, you know, I had a company called I Am Adventures. It was a travel adventure creative travel company, which was all about doing that kind of stuff. So I had quite a lot of backlash, you know, basically saying, well, you're not who you are then, and you know, why'd you go on about adventure when you don't, you know, you can't even go to base camp of Everest? Like, how ridiculous is that? And you know, a lot of belittling as well, because I was one of the only women, in fact the only woman at the time. And I just thought, you know, I don't care. Like, there's something not, this is not going to work for me. Like, I'm not going. And I packed my bags and I walked, you know, if anyone's ever been to Nepal or Asia or anywhere like that, you know that it's not necessarily that easy to get from somewhere in the middle of nowhere to get a taxi. So shoved all my bags, stuff in my bags, grab them, you know, I'm going down this road and I get in a taxi, and it cost me a fortune because it was the only taxi around. And I move and I go to a different part of Nepal where I knew people, and I started a different project. And within a few days, can't remember, I think it might have been just over a week, and my partner decided to come over. And I think it was literally my birthday was at the same time, and we decided to like make something of it. And he came over, we decided to get married in a Nepali way, like in it was basically a marriage blessing in one of the temples, which was not planned at all. And the next day was when the earthquake happened. Now, we were in a place called Patan, which is quite an old part of Nepal. It's very very old, lots of old buildings, not very well made buildings. And we just come out of our huge tower block of a building that we were living in. And when I say huge tower block, I don't mean the kind of tower blocks that we see here. I mean, 3 stories of a building. And I remember Chris being in the ATM and trying to get money out, and I was outside, and this street was 2 meters wide with small buildings either side, and the earthquake happened. And I suddenly realized what it was. Or was I? No, I was in the ATM and Chris was outside, and I was trying to get this money out and it wasn't working. And I just suddenly had this feeling that something bad was going to happen. And I came out of the ATM and I looked at Chris, and we just stared at each other, and then suddenly the earthquake started. And I thought, oh my God, because I was brought up in Greece and Zakynthos, we had earthquakes all the time there. So I knew what to do. I knew, you're literally trained from the age of like 3 of what to do in an earthquake. But of course, there's a lot of other precautions, like the buildings are built to withstand earthquakes. In Nepal, that's not the case. So I'm just standing in the middle of this tiny street thinking, oh my God, these buildings are going to fall on our head, and just constantly looking up, thinking which one's going to go first. And the temples in front of us fell, the temples behind us fell. There was literally one way out, and it was through this one even smaller street to get to an opening. And I was just waiting and waiting and waiting until the moment where I felt like it was the right moment to run. And just at that moment, it kind of calmed down. We ran, got through to the other side, and it started again. And at that point, so that day was when the guys that I'd been working with got to base camp. So half of them died at base camp that day.
Wow. So obviously you were guided not to go. Yeah.
Yeah, and be at the somewhere, like literally if I'd been a few meters behind or a few meters in front, I could have been crushed by the temples. So I was very very much in like luckily in the right place at the right time. And yeah, the guys that their story goes on actually, because the guys that I was with, especially the 2 main guys, one of them had to literally dig people out, like get people out of the avalanche, because there was an avalanche, which is what killed everybody or a lot of the people. And then a few days later, during the aftershocks, they got crushed again when the building that we were staying in during that time collapsed. So, like it was insane. And then one of the other guys went back a few years ago and actually summited Everest. On his way down, he died. So it was like all these people have died regardless of this time, like it was a really strange scenario.
And it must have been such a tough decision for you to walk away from that when everybody was like, come on, you're into adventure. You're meant to be like the one who's like, doing all these adventurous things, and to have to walk away.
And also to be the only woman there to doing that. It felt like I was failing women. Do you know what I mean? Like it was like, oh well, you're obviously not that strong, or you're not this, or you're not that. And there was so much manipulation there as well, on a psychological level. And as well, like I felt bad leaving the project because I did love it. I loved what we were doing, and I felt like it was my responsibility to try and steer it in the right direction. But ultimately, sometimes you just have to go with your gut. And I think when you have such a strong physical reaction to something as well, there's something seriously wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, and I want to touch on that because I love going into the difference between like that strong like fear reaction where you were crying and you're like, no, I don't want to do it. But there's also times where there's stuff that we have that strong physical reaction to. Um, but it's the very thing, it's the fear that we need to conquer.
Mm.
So how do you tell the difference between the two?
Oh gosh. Okay, so I can give you an example of that actually. So when I moved to Spain a few years ago, we we just got this lovely flat in the UK in Bristol. It was a really lovely flat. I was really happy in it. But I had this message to move to Spain, and it was just sudden. It was just one day suddenly, and I thought, this is so weird. And I rang my partner and I said, what do you think about moving to Spain? Never in a million years thinking he would say yes, because he had a full-time job. It was just not a thing. And he literally just turned around and said yes. And I thought, oh, I didn't expect that. And then for the next 2 months, I was freaking the heck out. I was like, what are we doing? Why are we moving to Spain? We've just got this amazing flat. We've got our life here. This is going to be horrendous. What if this turns out like every other time that I've gone somewhere, because every other time there has been some kind of natural disaster, or I've had to clear loads of energy, or I've had to put my life on the line, or it's not always worked out well, let's put it that way. And I was scared. I was really scared to do it, and I didn't want to. A huge part of me didn't want to do it, and I was resisting it so much. But the fact that it all just happened, like everything had fallen into place so easily, and I just had to keep reminding myself of that, of if it's meant to be, then this is how it's meant to be. It's meant to be in flow. Maybe it is scary, and maybe I just need to trust that it's going to work out fine, and that it is for my highest good. And I just kept saying, I don't want another natural disaster, okay? I don't want another thing to happen. I just want a nice time. Like, I want to go there for me. I don't want to go there for everyone else. Like,
And
that
I
was
think,
something that was really important for me, because I was fed up of having to sort everything else out. And I just
yeah,
wanted to do my own thing for a bit.
the fact that you said though that despite the fear, everything was falling into place and it was coming together and it was seeming to flow, I think that's always a clear indication that you're on the right track, because there's that resistance in your head or that fear in your head, but everything's coming together. The universe is like lining things up. And it's like, okay, I think when there's like obstacles placed in your path
Mm.
and when you're like trying to force something and you
Yeah,
keep having obstacle after obstacle, then it's like, okay, universe, what are you telling me here? Is this not the right way? When things fall into place, you're like, okay, I'll keep going with this. And you know that that's kind of the universe helping you.
definitely. And actually, just before I flew to Nepal that time, I remember having that same fear prior, and it took me ages to book my flights. I was literally having pretty much panic attacks booking the flights, and it kept going wrong. The flights kept not being there, and like it was all a huge mess, and I was freaking out. Like I could not press this button, and I think it was because of the other people that I did it in the end, because they were pushing me to get it. If it wasn't for them, I don't think I would have done it.
Mm.
um and I
But we
think,
we learn from these experiences as well. Yeah.
definitely, and you learn to listen to, what is your intuition, and when are you getting pushed or pulled in a direction because of others.
Hmm.
And it's easy, it is quite easy to be pulled somewhere where you don't actually want to go, in your heart of hearts, and you do things because you think that you should, or because other people are saying so, or because or money, or whatever, like all of these other external factors, and you ignore your own messaging, your own intuition, your own signals, and pretend that they're not there, or pretend that they're not valid, or they're not, they trick yourself into thinking that it's something else. Ultimately, though, you do know, and you do tend to know the signs as well. And
I have a story about that. When I was younger, I had just finished school, and I wanted to go to France with my friend for the summer. And I think I was only maybe 17 or 18. And my parents were like, look, I don't think it's a good idea. You're going on your own. It's a big city. I was going to Paris, and they're like, it's a big city. You've never lived in a big city like that. And they basically gave me all the reasons not to go. And my mother said that I turned around and said, okay, I'll think about it. And a couple of days later, I came back and I said, so I've thought about all the things you said, and I'm going.
Yeah, I'm going anyway. So.
Yeah. And the same when I started, a business as a healer, and started, I was in a corporate job, and it was like a secure salary, and I was doing very well. And I remember my mother saying, you've got it really good. I don't think you should give all that up to become a healer. And, just maybe do it on the side. And I was like, I just have to, and I knew in my head the things that she was saying made sense. But another part of me was like, no, I have to do this. So I think as you said, when you have people pushing you, sometimes you have to go with what they say to realize, oh no, that was the wrong decision. And then sometimes you have to push back and say, okay, I'm going to go with my gut on this. You talked about the divine feminine, and I want to get into that a little bit, because I know that this rise of the divine feminine, especially in business, and us as healers and teachers, we're bringing this energy forward. And can you talk a bit about that and how you work with it?
Yeah, and I think a lot of what we've discussed today comes back to that, actually. It comes back to listening to your issue and following that flow, following what feels right, as opposed to constantly doing and acting and pushing. And we've been taught to go and to live in that more masculine energy. But actually what we've done because of that is we've ended up living in an imbalanced masculine energy, and not really understanding what it's like to be in the divine masculine and in the divine feminine, and what that's like when we have the two in balance. And when we're talking about masculine and feminine, just for your listeners, we're not talking about gender, we're talking about the energy that's within all of us. We all have masculine and feminine energy, and the way that, because I work a lot with the elements, like we were talking about, I always think of the masculine as this more fiery energy and the feminine as this more watery energy. And when you start to think about it in terms of the elements, you can really see the difference of fire as this creative force, this transformation, this, very much, much more activating energy. Whereas water and the feminine is this intuitive, flowing, nurturing, very, very peaceful energy, but both powerful in their own ways. Water can be sometimes even more powerful than fire, right? And fire equally can, go and ravage whatever it wants. But they have such, they're very different, but they both do quite similar things in terms of creating and transforming and changing. And what we forget is that just because you're in the feminine and you're in the flow and you're pausing and you're slowing down and you're reflecting and you're listening to your intuition, doesn't mean that you don't know what you want. It doesn't mean that you're not going to take action. And it certainly doesn't mean that you don't know, how to be in your power. Actually, it means the complete opposite, because you have reflected and you are listening to your intuition and you are listening to your own sacred power, all the things that we talked about today, that was, well, actually, I'm going to connect with my divine feminine force, and I'm going to understand my essence and not be defined by external factors, and not let this idea of needing to constantly be doing to influence who I am and what I want. And equally in the divine masculine, it's I'm not going to let ego influence who I am and what I want. I'm not going to let control, the fear of control or the need for control, to influence what I'm going to do and who gets a say in that. I'm not going to just take any action. I'm going to take aligned action because I've paused to reflect on what that looks like and what that means for me. And you start to see then how the two are connected, and how that's connected to not just how we live our life, but how we create our business, how we run our business, what it means to us, what it means to our clients, and how we can start to change the world through that process.
And I think it's so important, as you say, to have that balance, because most people have dominance of one or the other. And when one or the other is dominant, then there's this imbalance. So if it's the feminine that's dominant, obviously we have that beautiful intuition and the flow, but maybe we don't take the action steps we need towards getting things done. And equally, if the masculine is more strong, then maybe we're taking loads of action steps, but it's not aligned, or it's not in our highest good. So when they're actually balanced, and that balancing act can be from moment to moment, from day to day. It's not as if you're in balance and that's it. It's something that we work towards. It's like, what I like to do is, when I tune into my intuition, and then I'm like, okay, so what action steps do I need to take? And then if I find that I'm like going ahead or running away with myself, I kind of pull back and say, okay, well, maybe I'll sit down and I'll just, meditate on this, see if this is actually still where I need to be going. So I know you work with this in business. Sorry, do you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I was going to say that the way that I do it actually is I make sure, because I have a lot of masculine energy. I have a lot of Capricorn in my chart. I'm very much a workaholic. So I have to remind myself to slow down and that that's okay. And I've learned that through the years, and now the moment that I realize I'm tired, or that I'm not being proactive, or I'm not, I'm actually just not being very productive in what I'm doing. I might be doing a lot, but that a lot isn't creating real results. I step away and I get into my flow. Yesterday I had a bath in the middle of the day because I was just like, well, I just need I just need a bath.
And
Get
that's
some time
okay.
out. Yeah, and that's okay. And I think we've got to remember that it's okay to do things in the way that feel right to us in that moment, day by day, exactly like you say. And actually, one of the things that I've been talking about lately, and actually I do have this as a freebie, just I don't know if that's something that we can offer your listeners later, but it's talking about how each day has its own energy, and each day actually has more masculine or more feminine energy. And when we start to understand how nature works, and how our earth works, and our planet, and our whole system, our whole solar system, we can work with that. And so let's say it's a more masculine day, you harness that energy, you go with that energy, you do more masculine things so that it comes naturally to you. You're not fighting against the current, you're going with it. But remembering that if at some point during that day you're feeling more tired, then it's okay to take a step back. And on the more feminine days, you're spending the day being creative, self-care, going out in nature, doing things that are going to revive that energy, doing things that are going to help you to slow down, to listen to your intuition. And if at some point you have, some kind of inspiration hit and you want to do something about it, great, go and do that. But the balance isn't always, I'm always in my feminine and masculine. It's knowing how to harness the two at the right time for you.
It sounds like a bit of a dance where
Yes,
one steps forward, the other steps back, and then it's kind of this harmony of flow where they're kind of intermingling and flowing with and through each other.
definitely. I love that visualization there. Yeah.
And I can totally relate because I have that kind of predominance of masculine energy as well. And the fact that I love my work, I
Yeah.
could just work like all day. And we were homeschooling recently with lockdown, and my kids they were given this thing to draw. And I sat down with them and I was like, okay, I'll draw this as well. And I love just sitting and drawing. And I'm not artistic. I wouldn't call myself artistic. I have other members of my family who are, but I love just sitting and being in that creative mode. And for me, that comes through sometimes by creating an Instagram post where it's like all the creative aspects to it are like this artistic kind of expression. And it comes through in various different ways.
Definitely. And actually, I always talk about my art as my healing. It's my way of self-healing and of just cutting off. It's my way of stop thinking, stop being in logic brain, and just being flow. Just
Mm.
let it all out. You're not thinking about things, you're not worrying about anything, you're just being completely in the moment. And for some people, that's singing or dancing or swimming or running, whatever it might be. But finding that thing that helps you to just be in complete flow is the key for
Mm.
sure. And having
There's
that way of disconnecting from everything else and connecting to yourself.
Absolutely. And the three things that I find for me are meditation, walking in nature, and yoga. I find that they bring me into that flow and take me out of that kind of masculine energy when I need to just kind of rebalance. Um, I want to go full circle because at the start we were talking about nature and your youth in like the fields. And now I know you work with the elements in your business. And I'd love to talk a little bit about that. How does that work?
Yes, so I'm an elemental energy healer. I was actually attuned to Reiki when I was 16. I've always naturally been a healer, so that's always something that's been a part of my life. I remember being at school and healing like my friends and doing palm readings and all sorts of crazy stuff. And so it was quite a natural thing for me to start to embody that more and more. And actually, it was quite hard for me to do because I was scared to bring that out into the world, right? Even though that was very much who I've always been. Um, and I was brought up in very much a spiritual environment. It was hard for me to accept that as part of my business for a long time. And it wasn't until I moved more into my connection to nature and became certified in elemental healing that I realized this is really important to me, and this is something that can help my business and help my clients, and I can integrate it in a really um, natural way. And when I started to embrace that more and to talk about it more, I realized how much it all integrated into what I was already doing. So, my main work is about helping people discover and activate their soul mission and help them to connect with that, help them to connect to their own power so that they can listen to their own intuition, listen to their soul, and know what it is that they want to do, know what business they want to create. So, one of the key things when activating that is activating that masculine and feminine energy, understanding it, but importantly, it's activating and connecting to the elements, because what I truly, truly believe is that we are on earth to be on earth. And one of the things that I used to struggle with when it came to the more spiritual aspects of, of that whole niche, is this connecting to spirit, going off into the clouds, going somewhere else. And actually, and maybe that's partly because I have got a bit more masculine energy in me. It's, for me, it's bringing that all into our physical reality. It's harnessing all of that ancient wisdom and that power to be on earth and to live this life on earth. And I really have such a strong connection to the earth and to Mother Earth. And I think that, she wants us to do that. She wants us to bring our true essence here and to help her and to help each other. And there's so much magic around us. I was watching a program yesterday, funnily enough, about Harry Potter, hilariously, and it was a documentary about all these different things that had been in Harry Potter, and J.K. Rowling was talking about all of these different aspects, and they were looking at all of the ancient, all these ancient manuscripts and symbols and signs, and all the myths and legends, and it just dawned on me how so many cultures and all cultures and societies around the world for thousands and thousands of years have believed in magic. They've believed in fairies and dragons and giants, and that the trees had power, that the flowers have power, and we have all of this wisdom, and we've been taught to dismiss it for so many years.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why so many cultures believed in it at some point. And I feel like we're slowly coming back to that now. The elements have woken up. The dragons have woken up. The trees have certainly woken up and are asking for our help. I feel like the earth is talking to us again and asking us to remember. And that is something that, I'm so passionate about, creating a better place for the next generation, and making sure that the earth is happy, and that we're happy living on the earth. And when I started to help people create businesses, and when I was creating businesses, that was something that was really important to me. So opening up to the elements and to creating a better world is something that my soul clients want. They want to create businesses that make a difference in some way. So when we're activating those elements, we're activating not just themselves and their own soul and their own body, but their connection to the earth, so that they can create these conscious businesses that harness their gifts, and bring that, awaken that energy more.
So there's a few things I want to go into here. I want to go into the elementals a bit more, but I love that you touched on that making of Harry Potter, because I think the media has such an important role to play. And it's funny because I was watching a movie with my kids, and it was by an Irish production house, and it was called The Secret of Kells. And
I love it.
did you see it?
Yeah. Okay, so something I haven't actually explained is that I'm part Irish, so Greek and
really?
Irish, yeah. So I'm
Brilliant.
fully on board.
Great, I love it. But that movie, and I've watched a few others that same studio has done, but I love how they bring that magic into it. It's all about the Book of the Kells and its origin, but the magic of nature. And I think that's such an important role to play. People are and especially children, when children are watching this, and like my kids will go outside, and you talked about like building dens and stuff. They'll like build dens for hours, but they'll talk about the angels, and they'll talk about how they feel like the energy of the wind. And my son says that he can control the wind, and all these things. Yeah. But when you talk about the elementals, for me, elementals are like nature spirits.
Yeah.
But are you relating to that, or is it the elements of earth, air, fire, water, or is it all of the above?
All of that. Yeah. So it's all of that. So so it is the elements, so 5 elements: air, water, fire, earth, and spirit. And in Greek we call it ether.
Yes.
And then the elementals within each element. So, you know, in earth you have the trees and the giants and the fairies and all of those more earthly elementals. And
The
then
divas.
yeah, exactly. And in the fire elements you have the fire dragons and the salamanders, and the phoenix. And with water you have the mermaids and the silks and the sylphs. And with what have I not said? Spirit,
Earth,
you have
yeah,
unicorns. And I
and
always
air.
yeah, and air you have the more the sylphs that are in the sky. And the
The
I actually
wind.
find, I mean, yeah, of course the wind, but I also find that because I'm very, very connected to the animal kingdom, and the animals always come into play as well. So the birds always come in when there's the air as well. And you know, and with the air element you actually have the different winds. So in Greece we have the north wind, the south wind, the east wind, and the west wind, and they all have different properties. And you know, when I connect the elements to business, so I have a whole system which is called elemental business design. And when we connect the elements to how we create and activate our soul mission and our businesses, we look at what the attributes of the elements are and what they teach us and what they activate within us. So with the earth element, it's very much about grounding, but it's also about building those foundations, you know, creating the systems that you need in place so that you can build your business, so that you can do everything that you need to do above that, right? So when we're looking at, for example, our chakras, the earth element is connected to our base chakra because it's that first step. It's the ground that you need in order to start building on. But it's also healing everything that's come before. So healing all of the childhood stuff, you know, making sure that you've got a good foundation and that it isn't on shaky ground, that you haven't got a lot of unresolved stuff that you haven't dealt with yet. And then, you know, the next one would be water, which is much more about connecting with the feminine energy, the flow, making sure that you're connecting to your intuition so that you know what you want to do, making sure you're connecting to your soul and able to start to feel, see, and hear things, making sure you know how to stop so that you're not constantly just going, you know, like blind almost and just doing stuff for the sake of it. um and also listening to your clients as well, a really big one. You know, when we talk about that water element, it's if you're to look at astrology, the water element is, you know, Cancer. It's that community, nurturing, connecting with others, understanding others, making sure that you're sensitive to what they need. And that's very much about yourself, you know, mothering yourself, but also making sure you're looking after your people. And then you've got what have I got? Fire, which is about the action, the creation, taking aligned action, you know, creating those services and putting them out there, starting to see what it is that you are actually wanting to do and how that looks. Much more going for it, right? It's much more, is that, again, in astrology you'd be looking at the Aries, the kind of the risks taker, the leader, the person who isn't scared to take that first step, and Leo, who isn't afraid to be on the stage and to be seen as that leader. And then you've got spirit, and spirit in the chakras is all of the upper chakras. So it's the voice, it's your throat chakra, it's your third eye, and it's your crown. So it's all of those things that are starting to connect you to showing up as who you truly are, to being the teacher, to being that person who isn't afraid to speak up for what they believe in, isn't afraid to be who they are publicly, come out of the shadows, step out of the closet, do what needs to be done.
Which I think so many healers struggle with often, and not even healers, but women and people who are entrepreneurs, even though they know they have something to share and it's valuable, it's that fear of being seen and showing up, which is huge. So yeah,
definitely.
That's so important.
And connecting to that, one of the things that I'm truly passionate about is enabling people to be their own master teachers, right? So that you're not constantly following the next guru. You are your own guru. You are the person who knows yourself fully and truly, and you have something to share. We all have something to share and to teach, and the people that we naturally attract, they're the people that we can help, and they in turn are going to help us. And it's always that give and take. There is always that balance. And our soul clients are there to teach us something just as much as we're there to teach them something. But
Absolutely.
But we have to step into that role of, I am willing to be that teacher, to do that, and to learn ourselves.
And it's like you talked about that balance of the masculine and feminine. It's that give and take, and it's a union. It's not just I'm the teacher and you're the student. And I find that with my children as well, that they teach me so much. And often like if I am trying to rush out someplace, like my son will turn around and say, just breathe, just take a deep breath. And I'm always telling him that, but I love that he can turn around and say that to me as well.
Oh, I love it.
So I love all of this. I mean, I think it's so needed. And the fact that you're bringing all this in, and I suppose normalizing working with the elements in business, which I think is amazing.
I think that it's really interesting because over the last, I would say, 2 years, we've become so more aware of the elements, in the mainstream. Like I've noticed so many films like the one that you talk about where they're using the elements, even the Frozen, the second one was all about the elements. Like there's so many new programs coming out that is using the idea of the elements, and I don't think that's coincidental. I genuinely think that that's because they're waking up. They want us to be aware of them. They want us to be able to connect with them again, and to work together. The elementals are so lovely. They really want us to work with them. They want to help us, and they have so much to share. We all have elemental guides. We just need to open up to working with them.
Well, if people would like to contact you, where is the best place to go? How do they get in touch with you?
Yes, so my website is www.nataliakomis.com, and you can literally just put my name in anywhere and I will come up. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Natalia Komis. I have a Facebook group called Humans on a Mission as well, where I talk about this kind of stuff and show up, so you can join that. But yeah, you just search my name and you'll find me.
Brilliant. And we'll put a link in the show notes as well. It's been such a wonderful conversation. I just admire so much the work that you're doing, and it's been such a pleasure learning from you and chatting with you. Thank you so much, Natalia.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story, Sandra, and to talk about this stuff, because we don't always get to talk about it so openly. So thank you very much.
A pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will be back next week for another episode of the Fiercely Spiritual Podcast. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.